Our next speaker is Pernilla Näsfors, who is going to talk about open data in a truly global perspective. Pernilla is going to talk about making open data global in the sense that we should get everybody on board, and then also in the sort of geographically global sense that it's supposed to be all over the world and all kinds of data. And Pernilla is an open data expert who works for the World Bank and the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, but through her own company. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, wow. I even got my slides up. That's a whole revolution in itself. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Are you awake? Good. Yeah, so I'm actually going to talk to you twice today. This morning now in English, but you'll see more of me this afternoon as well, but then I'll speak in Swedish. But yeah, today I'm going to start talking about the global open data revolution. So yeah, I put on my revolutionary open data scarf today. It's a scarf with the public domain pictures of the moon from NASA printed on a scarf. So yeah, that's how I try to be revolutionary today. Are you ready for the revolution? I hope so. Okay, so what is this global data revolution? This was something that the UN high-level panel on the post-2015 development agenda presented in a report. So this is a United Nations panel that are working on the new goals for development that will lead. It will come after the Millennium Goals that we've had, and the idea is that if we want to be able to measure all these the new Sustainable Development Goals, as they call them, we need a data revolution for sustainable development. So I'm going to talk to you about what that is and what needs to happen in order for us to be able to measure how the world is being developed in the future. So this that call was from last year, but now I think in August the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon he gathered, or they set up a group, an international, what was it called, independent expert advisory board, I don't know, whatever. Some long and complicated name of a group that had 6 weeks to produce a report, and it was released on the November 6th here, called All That Counts, Mobilizing the Data Revolution for Sustainable Development. And it's available online, and yeah, some of the just key takeaways I'm gonna bring up is from that report. So what is the data revolution? It is an explosion in the volume of data. So it's one estimate that someone has made is that 90% of all the data that exists today is produced within the last 2 years. So that equals, I tried to count it, I did this myself. It's supposed to be like 10% in blue and 90% in green. So yeah, the volume of data is really exploding in the world right now. And the speed in which data are produced are also exploding. And when you talk about data, we often use the word big data nowadays. And when you talk about big data, one thing you can say to try and explain it, like in comparison to more like statistical data that is not like real-time data, is that big data can be like a movie of what's happening right now, and you try to see what's happening in real time, while like old types of data is like taking a picture of what was happening at this moment. So yeah, you don't learn much about traffic while looking at this, even though it's a long exposure time. So you try to see a bit more of what was happening at a little longer, but it just, I mean, you can't see the full thing of what's happening. So yeah, this whole data revolution is speeding up the data that comes available. There's also an explosion in the number of producers of data, even though this picture might not be very representative, because, I mean, even though this is like lights from space in different cities and or you know places all over the world, and I mean, even if we might produce more data in the more like electrified parts of the world. Other parts of the world that doesn't have as much electricity, they still produce data. I mean, they have mobile phones maybe when they walk around, or just by like being a person in a country that is part of like the statistics of like how many people live in this country, then you're a piece of data. So it's like, yeah, almost everything can be data. And yeah, you can use data for example, in this example is they have realized that they can use this light from like the amount of light that you can see from space as a proxy for GDP growth. So like the poorer region, the less light and so on. So you can use new sources of data for new things as well. And an explosion in the dissemination of data, how data is being spread over the world. And the last bit, which was very long, and I had to try and fit in to include the full definition that they had in the report. An explosion in the range of things on which there is data coming from. So new technologies such as mobile phones and Internet of Things, and other sources such as qualitative data and citizen-generated data and perceptions data. And finally, the data revolution is also a growing demand for data from all parts of society. These pictures are from data literacy boot camps that I was part of running through my job at the World Bank. These pictures are from Nepal, Malawi, and Bolivia, where we held workshops for journalists and civil society organizations, and so for them to learn how to use data as well. And data literacy, you can say that it's the intersection of information literacy, statistical literacy, and technical skills. So in order to be able to use data, you need all of these things to learn how to use data, basically. Statistical capacity. It's also an important thing, and that's part of this data revolution. This is a map of, I think it's all the countries that are given aid from, or not aid, loans from the World Bank. So the World Bank is an organization that gives loans to countries. And the darker the green color, the higher the statistical capacity in these countries. So you see that mainly in Africa, there's not much statistical capacity, and you need this to be built up in order to have basic data like populations and like how many people go to school or things like that. So this data revolution is also called for a better statistical capacity in all parts of the world. And it's of course important that this types of data is released openly. So the World Bank has a open data website on data.org. There we have more than 8,000 indicators on everything from climate change to gender to economy and everything. So yeah, that's a big resource for data, but of course it also requires us to get access to that data from government to make census or things like that. The ultimate goals for this data revolution for sustainable development is to get more empowered people, better policies, better decisions, and greater participation and accountability that leads to better outcomes for people and the planet. So basically, get a better world. And they have come up with 9 basic principles. So first one, data quality and integrity. Data quality is of course very, very important. Data disaggregation, make sure that the data is detailed enough so that you can make the conclusions you need to have. Data timeliness, to make sure that the data is new and not several years old or something. That is, it's transparent and open, of course, and usable, and that you can also curate the data, that you might need like information, what we call intermediaries, like data journalists and so on, that can help sort of make sense of the data and spread it to the more general public. You need to think about data protection and privacy. I'm going to get into that a bit more. Data governance and independence, data resources and capacity, and data rights, which has to do with human rights and so on. But yeah, as we're in the field of talking about open data, I was glad to see that this report had prominently in the report this quote that all public data should be open by default, which is very good that they have that in their recommendation, I think. But yeah, open data can also be a contradiction perhaps when you think about privacy. And I want to recommend this I don't know what it's called, network or something called Responsible Data Forum, who organize some conferences and meetups over the world, and they've created this book called Shooting Our Hard Drive into Space and Other Ways to Practice Responsible Development Data, about how to responsibly use data in specifically in a development setting. And when I speak about development, by the way, it's not software development, it's international development. Just to make that clear. And yeah, that book that they created in 3 days in a book sprint, they have a definition of what responsible data is. It's the duty to ensure people's right to consent, privacy, security, and ownership around the information processes of collection, analysis, storage, presentation, and reuse of data, while respecting the values of transparency and openness. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's important that when we talk about open data, to also think about using data responsibly. For example, when we work at CEDA, we publish data about where the Swedish aid money is going. But we don't publish all the details about all the things that we do. For example, we give a lot of aid to human rights activists, and we don't want to sort of publish the names of people who are working for gay rights in Uganda or something like that. So the default is open, but we have been putting a lot of effort and time into making sure that the things are open, or that we don't release things that shouldn't be open. And I think this report also included a good summary, I think, of what their view of responsible data is that the right to privacy is for those without power, and transparency is for those with power. And that also includes, for example, telecom operators and so on, who might get requests from governments to release data on their users. Then it's important for them to be transparent about them getting those kinds of requests and things like that. So, yeah, so the users will know what they've been asked for. Information is power, and you can view data as a natural resource that should be harnessed responsibly. Yeah, it's like, I mean, I guess you can view data as like, yeah, nuclear power that can do a lot of harm if it's not used in the right way. But if it's harnessed in a good way for public good, then we can do hopefully a lot of good in the world. Yeah, thank you. Now I'll go and continue the open data revolution.
Thank you, Pernilla.
Thank you.
I think it was really interesting how you spoke about the need to balance openness with privacy protection, and it sounds like you have some valuable experience in that field, because I do imagine it can be really difficult to know when to tell the full story and when to withhold certain details to protect individuals. And coming from the public sector, I know that we are really worried about making any kind of mistakes, because once the mistake has been made, you can't really take it back. If you expose the names, for example, of activists in certain countries, you can't just say, no, this was a mistake, we didn't mean it, and then delete it because it's already out there. So I suppose that is a really big issue, and especially when you talk about the truly global data all over the world, because it requires quite a lot of knowledge, I suppose, about the world to know when to do what.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.